Okay, so this is not a prescripted video and it's completely new. However, this video won't be that long of an analysis because it's only Varka, but I thought it's proper to make a video out of it anyway because there are certain things that you might find odd about Varka's expedition. Thanks to this update, we actually got a pretty good view on his story and the real goal of his expedition. So I'm here to help you with that. In today's video, we'll explore who Varka is based on his story and also from his story quest. There won't be any detailed theorizing, but we can do small snippets of it as we go. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Glitchxcity and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. But before that, let's pay some bills. Now that Varka is out, it's not surprising if a lot of people want to pull for the man. I mean, look at him. Huge muscles, manly face. Previous men could never, except for Rohitam. I love this man to death. Of course, for one to get a Varka, one must surrender their possession to the Varka. And that's why Lootbar is here to help you with that. Lootbar has been a long-time partner of this channel now, and that's because I use it myself. They provide cheaper crystals compared to in-game prices, supports consoles, supports Miliastro and Natlan, and they have packages that guarantee you to get characters you want. All you need is to enter your UID, no personal information required, and your items will arrive quickly. Over 36,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Lootbar, and their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Aside from Genshin Impact, other popular games are included in Lootbar as well, including the newly added Arknights Enfield. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all of the discounts and receive special discounts for returning customers. Now let's continue with the content. I already made a detailed analysis on Varka's background on my Bloodstained Knight video, but there is more information that we got from him and also his background from his story quests and character stories. I'll be mixing all of the information we got from my last video, then add the gaps from the newest information we got so far. If there are certain things that just don't make sense or not that clear, then I'll add a bit of my own analysis. With that, let's start from the very beginning. During his youth, like kids his age, Varka dreamt of becoming a knight. So of course, when he got older, he would enter the knight's examination and pass every single one of them with flying colors. But contradictory to what he hoped for, he received a letter from the Grandmaster at the time, Valentine, basically rejecting him. Before finished reading, Varka scrunched his letter and threw it to the bin. It annoyed him so much that he attacked Valentine and his men while they were drunk. Valentine quickly cleared up the air, basically saying, first of all, read! Read! Secondly, I suggest you explore the world first and find your reason to become a knight. You have huge potential inside you, and I doubt you'll last 3 weeks being stored doing paperwork anyway. So with that, Varka finally set out on his adventure across 7 nations. He started his journey from Port and eventually met all sorts of people and cultures. One day, he met with a fellow adventurer named Seamus Pegg, who we learn is actually from Nod-Krai. With that, if he becomes playable, it's very possible that he wields a moon wheel instead of a vision. Also, this canonically makes Jean and Barbara mixed race, as their father came from Nod-Krai, while their mother came from Mondstadt. Regardless, Varka told Seamus about 3 of his other friends in Mondstadt and was curious about what they are doing right now. Seamus told him to just return if he is that curious and came along with Varka because he is very interested in Frederica. Literally just a shot in the dark. It's also this time that Varka finally found his reason to become a knight, to protect those he loved the most. Sometime after Varka returned to Mondstadt, he battled a certain ruin guard at the Thousand Winds Temple. Remember this thing? This gives me nightmares during my first use of this game. Regardless, that battle awakened Barbados at that time, and the two became friends. Soon after, Varka officially became a member of the Knights of Favonius and the Knights of Boreas. Defeating Boreas was quite interesting because apparently he wanted to test his limits, and when Boreas thought Varka never bestowed upon a vision, it turns out that Varka has a vision. Varka got his vision when he was practicing his 2 claymore techniques while he was drunk. I am not joking, that's literally what he said. Basically, Varka wanted to surpass Arundhalion, and he defeated Boreas without his vision despite having one. So, after Varka gained his title, that's the moment when he actually starts using his vision after a very long time of not using it, defeating Boreas with his long overdue power. Also, it's important to note that Varka's vision voice line supports what Ace said. Barbatos did not give Varka his vision, and he knew of it right away. Sometime after, Varka officially became the Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius. During this time, he often went on smaller expeditions to eradicate his enemies, primarily the Abyss. This is where the story of the manga and Diluc's story plays out, where Varka entrusted the Knights of Favonius under Eroc's hand before going on an expedition. However, at that time, he did not realize that Eroc was so jealous of Varka. For a brief introduction, Eroc plays a role in the manga and as the keeper and seal guard of Ursa the Drake, a monster that has plagued Mondstadt for a very long time, way before Vanessa and Fancy met. When Varka set out on his expedition, the tourists started to convince Eroc to become a traitor and promised him the power of the heavens. So, Eroc broke the seal, Ursa escaped his containment and killed Diluc's father, while the Knights of Favonius came late to the rescue, and Eroc had the audacity to order Diluc to cover the story so the Knights of Favonius' reputation remains clean. This obviously angered Diluc and is pretty much the reason why he left the Knights of Favonius in the first place. Varka, who eventually became aware of this, ordered his inner circle to investigate this matter and told Jean to do whatever she needed in order to punish Eroc. Jean won her duel against him. He was then severely punished while his men were taken care of by Jean, along with the Fatui who had huge influence at the time because the tourists slew Ursa. Then it's also during this time that Jean obtained her vision. As for Eroc's ending, it's unclear what happened, but it's likely that he escaped the prison after that. But he was cornered by Varka, and instead of admitting or surrendering, he laughed maniacally in mockery and took his own life in front of Varka. Also, it's worth noting that all this happened 4 years prior to the game's events, and because the game's date reflects the real-life timeline, all this happened around 9 in-game years ago. Later, Varka wanted to test his limits but also wanted to find allies to protect Mondstadt. So, under Barbados' guidance, the tripartite conference started, with all three coming into a conclusion to protect Mondstadt together. As per the pact, however, one must complete a trial in order to receive help from the Hexen Circle, which was the reason why paralogism happened in the first place. In Varka's case, he was the first person who faced the Hexen Circle trial, and his wish was to see Barbalos's Cryglass to see what fate might await. There, he saw two things. One, that Varka will become Mondstadt's hero, but he also saw great calamity that came from the north that will soon approach Mondstadt. So, the reason for Varka's expedition was also to accumulate as many souls of Boreas as possible, and it's possible that Varka saw that when he saw Barbalot's Cryglass. That is just a small theory for me, but the end goal remains the same regardless. It was up until this point that he remembered his reason to become a knight to begin with, and with that, Varka's grand expedition to the north finally started. It's worth noting that Varka did not know the expedition would end up in Nod-Krai, but do note that he knows it is somewhere in the north, which could be the reason why he went to Snezhnaya in the first place, as shown in his own trailer. Speaking of that, it was before the dawn of his departure that he visited Boreas, revealing to him a grand expedition that he will soon enroll to the north. Boreas knew what Varka was about to do, but he let Varka do it anyway because he knew it's all for the sake to lay his other self to rest. With that, Varka's grand expedition has started. He took 80% of Knights of Favonius' manpower and brought Frederica and Seamus with him. Oh, right. This is also the start of Godwin's misery. Actually, no, it's not misery. This guy is a f***ing ass. Now we enter the more recent events that happened with him and his expedition. Now we learn in Varka's story quest that his expedition was also to find Boreas' other souls that wandered off across Teyvat. Many of them are already imbued inside Varka's sword, and he continues on doing just that for years to come until recently. One day, Varka split up from the main group and headed to Natlan himself. There he met with Mabuika and shared some intel about the Abyss while getting drunk. This is also the moment where he learned about fishing the souls of the dead, basically using the power of friendship. No, for real, it's basically just that. What Varka learned here is basically something we did when we brought back Columbina during Luna 3 Archon Quest, where connection towards the target is what strengthens the target's connection with the ley lines. It goes the same when we tried to fish out Kachina's name using Sidlali's device, but was unable to fish out Malko's name, not only because it's been too long since he was deceased, but his connection towards Teyvat likely severed. In Columbina's case, her name is what allows us to fish her back, and it's almost the same with Varka, albeit his case is a bit more elaborate. I'll get to this in a bit. Soon after Mavuika shared her intel with Varka, he then returned to his group and continued on their journey. The timeline is sometime during the Wenlezavest, which was set around 4 years ago. He met with Capitano where he helped Varka's expedition with materials and backup. They shared more intel and Capitano told Varka about abyssal activities that indeed happened in the north. Whether he told Varka about Nod-Krai or the Wild Hunt, it doesn't seem to be the case as implied in Varka's trailer. Regardless, Capitano also told Varka the method that he used to store souls inside his art and warned Varka about the consequences. This will play a huge role later on, so be sure to remember. After that, he continued on with his expedition, wandering off for 2 years until Jean's birthday, where they finally found the lead to Nod-Krai. Seamus and Frederica were then sent back to Mondstadt, where both of them are now stationed in Domenport. This is where the rest of the stories are what we experienced during the Archon quest. However, now that we got even more lore from his own story quest, this is where we finally get to learn more about Varka's expedition and explain what happened at the end of his quest. So to put it simply, yes, the goal of his expedition was to stop the Wild Hunt from spreading to Mondstadt. Boreas' other soul was not yet laid to rest and has since then corrupted with the power of the Abyss. You might ask why there are 2 souls of Boreas. Well, it's quite simple. After his war with the Caribbean, Boreas refused to become the Anima Archon because of his lack of love to humanity, returned to Nod-Krai and fell into a slumber. During this time, Koitar already left the royal court of Silis and Boreas was left alone. 1,000 years later, he met with an unnamed man who sheltered inside the ruins from the cold. He invited Boreas to visit Mondstadt and in curiosity, he split his souls, letting one of them to journey with the man while the other stayed in Nod-Krai. This reminds me of the tri-factor incision that was used to split Zabai's souls, and judging from what Fetty told us, it seems Boreas is the most capable of this power than other gods. Regardless, the man soon became the first wielder of the Wolf's Gravestone, and also the first Knight of Boreas, but he refused to join the Knights of Avonius when they recruited him. At the same time, Boreas let his body pass on and protect Mondstadt with his power merged with the ley lines. Now worth noting that the one we faced in the story quest is not Roland, but the imitation of the Abyss after Vevi was defeated. Roland is already dead, or at least presumed to have died the moment he offered himself to the Abyss. Just like what Albedo said, it's the same as losing one kidney and making the other work overtime to compensate, and the concept is more or less the same. The Abyss tries to find a new leader, and in doing so, they create a new one by manifesting Roland and his connection with Boreas using the ley lines, hence why he became the new leader of the Wild Hunt and corrupted Boreas' souls in Nod-Krai. As to why Roland specifically, well, VEDRFOLNIR. Now this one is interesting because this method is exactly like what happened with the Caribbear's Archon quest. VEDRFOLNIR did not talk to the Traveler directly, but rather talked to them during his time. Just think of it like how Ayla talked to the Traveler during his Island's World quest. The concept is more or less the same as that. He saw what happened in the future and indirectly talked to Varka with his gaze, talking about how ironic the fate of the Bloodstained Knights is after he revealed the fate of Khaenri'ah. The one who talked to Roland in Bloodstained Knights Chivalry artifact set happens to be VEDRFOLNIR. Roland pledged himself to the Abyss, he surrendered all of his knowledge, and it's the reason why the Wild Hunt was able to create a mimic of Roland. Before the Traveler journey back to Nod-Krai, Boreas gave a small portion of his soul inside Razor's sword. The plan right now is to let the remaining part of Nod-Krai Boreas' soul to merge with the ley lines and free him from the clutches of the Abyss. To do this, Varka and everyone involved has to find the fragmented souls that are spread across Nod-Krai and imbue them within Varka's sword before they are further corrupted by the Abyss. The sword became a decoy, and the moment Varka was transported into Boreas' heart, he carried Boreas' soul inside of him and purified Boreas, allowing him to merge with the ley lines. With this, the Abyss Roland lost and is unable to further sustain himself, but at the same time, however, Varka's soul also merged with Boreas and is unable to return to the real world. Of course, this is where the Columbina method plays again. You might remember a very specific line that Varka told to everyone when he sent his letters via Lohen, and that is to reply back to him. So everyone replied, and using the Traveler as a medium, these letters helped to pull Varka from the ley lines. This similar case also happened with last year's Lantern Rite when the Traveler helped Hu Tao to survive the Tao Do sanctification. Her soul was supposed to be erased from the ley lines, but because the Traveler can anchor souls due to him being a descender, this allowed her to escape death. So you get where this is going: fishing out names, Columbina method, Hu Tao's soul pulling, and being a descender. This allows Varka to strengthen his connection with Teyvat, escape death, and his soul finally return to Mondstadt. If you still don't get it, just think of it as the power of friendship but more elaborate. It's literally just that. The ending of his quest is the classic Q&A, and it's quite as straightforward as it can get. The first question is what I just told you in this video, the second is basically where the Favonius Keep became the permanent branch of the Knights of Favonius, while the third is, well, basically he is avoiding work by returning to Nod-Krai on many occasions. However, there is a certain interesting statement that he just told us. Varka plans to ask Barbados if the Traveler failed, he anchored him in his stead. However, Varka ended up not doing that because the Archon's power would be too powerful if that were made to be the case. If anything, the price is very steep, and it is further revealed in the event quest that Fenty was holding back when Signora stole his Gnosis by force. His reason was very simple. Signora would have died and Mondstadt would pay the great price. You might remember a time when Fenty revealed he was the one that swept Marijivaru's timeline away, and he is implying that would be the case if he is not holding back. Damn! Well, there you go. The long-term theory that Fenty was holding back is indeed true. So you can imagine what would happen to Mondstadt if he used his power to save Varka. Varka is saved, but at what cost? Regardless, this is where our analysis ends. Honestly, there really isn't much to theorize on, but I find this quest very unique because it explains a lot of things that we learn throughout our journey, and we even learn more about more characters that we'll meet in the future. That said, I'll be making another video talking about the newest event quest because I believe something interesting will play out, let alone the Hexen Circle is involved this time. Let me just give you a small hint. I always have this theory that the summer events are hinting on what's to come in the next region. However, the Easy Breeze Holiday Resort doesn't really hint us anything about Nod-Krai, which makes me puzzle why they stopped the tradition. Turns out, that theory lacks one thing, and it further confirmed my suspicion. It wasn't about the summer events, but it was the Hexen Circle. However, as much as I enjoyed this story quest, I have criticism. Now, it's probably a bit of a taboo for a lore channel to have criticism about the lore itself, but honestly, it's not really about the quest being bad or not. My problem is how they present Varka. Ever since the game's release, Varka has always been a mentioned character, but we never really get to know him much other than his expedition that is said to be a huge thing. When they said Varka's expedition set out to Nod-Krai, I was really excited. Heck, this expedition is what I waited for the most. Not only that, his model doesn't disappoint. A lot of us expected him to be a Risley level, or at worst, we thought of him like Child and Ito, but turns out they go above and beyond for him, making him look older and a brand new model for him. That sets up the hype even more. True, my theory about his expedition having something to do with Boreas is correct. Heck, everything I said related to Boreas in this channel is actually correct. Roland was supposed to be the Knight of Boreas, Boreas got his power from Koitak, the Wild Hunt is coming to Mondstadt, and Varka's expedition is related to Boreas in the first place. That being said, however, I don't think they did his story justice because not only we got very little exposure of him in the Archon quest, but the presentation feels a bit underwhelming for something that they built up for over 5 years. I expected Boreas to play a role in the Archon quest since Varka said he came for the moon, and the wolves are the children of the moon. Yes, they sorta are because they came from Nod-Krai, which the place itself are moon pieces, but the whole thing feels like them just filling the gaps inside Varka's story quest, and all that 5 years of build-up is just for a story quest that a lot of people might quickly forget. His expedition barely had anything to do with the Archon quest, and it just ended like that. There's no horses, and the lore said he took everyone in the cavalry company, which should include horses as well. Where are they? Now, I won't talk about his gameplay because let's just admit it, they will buff him when Nicole comes out, but his lore, I feel like they could have done a bit more. It was fine, I enjoyed it, but for something they hyped for so long, I wish they could have done better. Of course, that's just my opinion, but if you have something that you want to say, feel free to let me know in the comments because I also want to know what you think. Jana!